I wasn't sure if I wanted to review the first season of Classroom of the Elite, due to the fact it's 5 years old now, with a second season that's probably finished by the time I upload this video, and because I didn't want to offend anyone for my more casual opinion on this series. I've never read the light novel, so my thoughts might feel worthless to the more hardcore fanbase this series has garnered over the years. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that's a really stupid mindset to have. So for anyone wondering, I have not read the light novel, nor do I really plan to, just because that's not how I like to digest my media. I'm much more of a visual kind of guy. I have read up on some of the controversies surrounding this show and its light novel, which I will make references to at some points in this review, but I have not actually read the source material. So if you were expecting me to critique this series because it's not the exact same thing as a light novel, then go freaking cry about it. Light novel readers are all just haters. They're all pieces of shit. For those who aren't in the know, Classroom of the Elite is a very popular light novel written by Shogo Kinugasa. It is widely regarded as one of the best light novels currently on the market, likely due to the characters and the psychology of the story. It received an anime adaptation in 2017 made by Studio Lerche and was directed by Hiroyuki Hashimoto. Classroom of the Elite is a story about Kiyotaka Ayanokouji going to one of the highest ranked high schools in Japan, where students have an endless amount of freedom and are able to spend their class points, which is like their in-school currency that replenishes every month, on whatever they want with limited restrictions. The students are also allowed to essentially do whatever they want with no consequence. This sounds like a paradise, but it doesn't last very long, as when the first month ends, the class points stop replenishing and the real plot of the show begins. The school introduces a hierarchy, pretty much, and ranks the classes through A and D based on class points. The higher up you are on the ladder, the more benefits you have. Class D is seen as the worst in the school, and wager to guess where our main protagonist ends up. Actually, this Class D in particular is worse than any Class D before, since the teacher mentioned there's never been a class that started with 0 class points. So they truly are the worst of the worst. Luckily, they have Ayanokouji in the class, and together they can make it to Class A in this cutthroat school. Right away, you can see the very obvious parallels between the school system and our real-world society. The less fortunate are seen as trash and are basically dumped together, forced to live out their days with fewer privileges than those at the top. And it seems impossible for them to get to the point of equal footing with those above them. I feel like it was designed to be this way by the school itself. They knew exactly what they were doing, putting these specific people together and giving them free rein to do whatever they wanted. I can't blame the students for taking advantage of the situation when it was probably the school's plan to put them in this position. The school system needs a bottom class in order to function properly. It's a really messed up school system that demonstrates a power dynamic and leads to bullying and manipulative methods from some of the higher classes, particularly Class C, who are the main antagonists for this entire season. I thought it was pretty interesting to learn about the school and the various methods the leaders will use to make sure their specific class comes out on top. It also shows with Class A that some classes aren't united together and different ideas will clash with other ideas from the same class. The similarities between this anime and the real world are pretty crazy, man. I mean, what do you expect from an anime that starts every single episode with some deep quote that relates to the episode in some kind of way? Class B is above Class C in terms of power, but doesn't look down on Class D, and in fact is very friendly with them, displaying that it's really just about perspective. In terms of story and premise, Classroom of the Elite is phenomenal with the themes and the way it reflects our real world. For as real as it can be, I do wish at times it was a little more realistic. but the psychology and the manipulation were fun to watch, and the story progressed in a way that interested me throughout. There were some moments like episode 7, which I'll talk about later, and at times the anime had Please Read the Light Novel written all over it. Ending on a major character development for your main character is definitely a move. I can understand the frustration a lot of light novel fans feel about this adaptation. I will say that due to the dialogue heavy nature of light novels, it's probably hard to adapt it fully into anime format unless you have a lot of backing and talent behind it. And if we really think about it for a second, that's probably the main issue here. Mushoku Tensei, for example. You can just see the passion behind it, the amount of hard work, effort, and skill to make this adaptation work in anime format. Mushoku Tensei, 86, ReZero, Monogatari, all some of the best light novel adaptations in anime, all had that same charm that makes the show a lot better. Classroom of the Elite lacks that charm, and it mostly feels like an advertisement. I've seen some compare this adaptation to Detective Is Already Dead, which is a little too far from me. This is still watchable at the very least. It's not as messy and all over the place in terms of story. It just feels like it lacks a certain passion that a lot of other light novel adaptations that are in the same realm of popularity and quality have. They have much better pacing, they have much more well-executed shots. The bigger moments just feel bigger in these animes compared to in this anime, where it's just, again, feels like an advertisement. For this section, since we don't know everything about the characters due to the slow build of the story, there's going to be a fair bit of theorizing and assumptions on my part, so I could be wrong on a few things here and there, so keep that in mind. Ayanokouji is the main protagonist. To put him very simply, he is mysterious. Even as viewers, we don't know a lot about him, and I don't mean that in a way that indicates a lack of depth as a character. Far from it. He is definitely deep, and there are slight mentions of a darker backstory here. We just don't know him at all. His mindset, his intentions, nothing is really confirmed yet. This leads to him being a character that varies depending on how the viewer thinks of him. His actions are left to interpretation. Some people take him at face value and think he's an edgy, manipulative jerk who only sees his friends as leaping pads for his own success, willing to use people to his advantage. To give those people the benefit of the doubt, he literally says it at the end. But I think there's more to his story judging from his actions at the start and how I personally saw them. I think he generally sees people as his friends, or at least saw them as his friends at the beginning. But he's raised on this survival of the fittest type mindset, and that's how he justifies his actions to himself. Why else would he help Pseudo and Sakura? Because to him, that's what a normal high schooler would do. They'd help his own classmates. And he helps HoriKITA by giving the credit to her, helping her reach her goal of getting to Class A. He's a character trying to change his mindset. He just wants to be normal, to get away from the harsh life he lived before. But this begs the question in my theory, why did he suddenly change in the later episodes? Well, I have an answer for that too, just indulge me a little more. In episode 8, the teacher got a call from someone who seems to have significant power over Ayanokouji, and she threatens him by making him compete in Class A or he gets expelled, which would most likely lead him to the exact same spot he was in before, the life he was trying so hard to escape from. Now he has to compete. He has to use the talent he's been hiding in an attempt to be normal, which is why he says what he says at the end. Now he's forced to play the game for his own success, to make sure that he doesn't go back to the harsh childhood that he lived through already. He can kind of be compared to Hiki from Snafu, in the sense that he helps people but gives the credit elsewhere. My only issue with this is Hiki has more personality. He seems like a regular person, which makes him more relatable and fun to follow as a protagonist. Ayanokouji feels like a robot sometimes. Like they will have these fan service scenes and there's just no emotion on his face whatsoever. So what's the point in having them? I saw these screenshots from the light novel of similar scenes and he had a lot more personality in them. He looks like a regular kid. I can't blame people for thinking he's edgy because we don't see this in the anime. Hell, I'd have no idea if I didn't look for it on Twitter. I don't know if this is on the chief animation director for doing Ayanokouji's face wrong, or if this is how Kadokawa or someone else with some power wanted him to be in the anime, but this is what I wanted out of Ayanokouji. Just some personality, something to make him a little more human. There's a lot with this character, and I hope they're doing alright with it in the sequel. I'm deliberately making sure to not watch any other episodes besides the first one before I finish this review. I can definitely see why he's so popular with people, but I think there's a lot more than just an edgy and cool character, and I hope it's developed further in the second season. HoriKITA is the main girl of this show, I guess. She's kind of this tsundere character who looks down on the other Class D students and thinks she's better than all of them. She disregards her classmates and thinks making friends is pointless. Ignoring all that, she is a smart character, and her determination to reach the top despite her circumstances is admirable. She has a right to be insulted by being placed in Class D, but she realizes her personality and the way she treats others is part of the problem. We slowly see her real self thaw out from the ice queen she presents herself as. She can be pretty vulnerable, especially around her brother, and I think her development throughout the series is pretty entertaining to watch. The one critical issue with HoriKITA, and this is gonna sound weird, but she gets a little too much time, and that makes every other girl feel less important. I'm not kidding. I wish the other characters had as much depth and growth as these two, but they don't. And I feel like part of that is because HoriKITA took up too much time away from the others. Let's finally talk about every light novel reader's least favorite episode. Episode 7. See, originally, I didn't think much about this episode. It was kind of a filler-esque episode where a little romance between Ayanokouji and HoriKITA is developed, and it furthers the plot that Class D isn't going to be a pushover, and they will fight for the top spot too. The only problem is, apparently that's not what was supposed to happen. Originally, it was Kei who got those scenes, which makes a lot more sense because in the next episode, they need a leader for this game, and they need someone who doesn't stick out so the other classes don't guess who the leader is. And they chose HoriKITA, when literally in the previous episode, she waged war on the entire school. Everybody knows who she is by this point. If Kei was the one in that scene, it would further her development as the leader in the class with her boyfriend, but it can also make sense in the game that they play later on. HoriKITA can still further her development, just less as a leader, but more as a regular member of the class, which fits her better. This decision made Kei feel pretty meaningless, and from what I saw, she's a main player in the new season. I liked HoriKITA, but if you think her being the main girl wasn't an issue, since this scene was supposed to be Kei's moment instead of hers, it led to Japanese fans boycotting the series, which threatened the possibility of sequels. The director's hard-on for a fictional girl almost cost this anime any possibility of a season 2. So clearly, I'm not the only one who had a problem with this. As I said before, not many characters have the level of growth that Ayanokouji and HoriKITA have, but this one is still worth talking about. So let's move on to Kushida is a seemingly positive, social, just all-around bright girl, but it's all a mask to hide a more sadistic personality. She wants to be friends with everybody, but as soon as she finds out HoriKITA doesn't really make friends, she completely breaks down and has a complete personality switch. Under the switch, she's manipulative and willing to blackmail people to make sure her hidden personality stays well hidden. This was a very interesting, unexpected twist for a rather one-note character, but I think we only see that side of her maybe twice. Hopefully in the next season we see more of it, because if done correctly, these kind of girls are some of my favorites. There's no real need to go on a deep dive for any other characters, as none of them have the growth or complexity as the main two. Not saying they're bad, but they're either one-dimensional or the anime doesn't give them enough time to really flesh them out. I did enjoy some of the characters. Like Sakura, she was adorable, and I really enjoyed her crushing on Ayanokouji. And some characters were pretty funny, but a lot of them we don't know anything about because of lack of screen time. Yusuke's development was pretty fun though, towards the latter half of the series. It was pretty fun seeing this character who was so confident in his ability to lead the class slowly begin to doubt himself when it's all in chaos. I do think when the show is at its very best, there can be some brilliantly written drama involving the characters. For example, during the Island arc, we're introduced to a character named Ibushi. She was a girl who was banished by her Class C and abandoned in the forest, eventually picked up by Class D. A character named Pseudo, who's like a generic hothead character, immediately calls her out for being a spy. But with Class D's trusting nature, they immediately all trust her and welcome her into the class. Then all these issues start happening, like panty thieves and all that. It begins to be complete chaos in Class D. As a viewer, you're naturally suspicious of Ibushi for causing all these problems, but due to Pseudo calling her out, knowing he's a dumb reactionary person, and Ayanokouji saying he trusts her, you kind of ease off on her a little bit. Me personally, I thought, well, of course they want me to think it's Ibushi, but it's probably just some traitor in the class. Turns out Ibushi was actually the spy and tricked everyone. They made you think it wasn't the obvious choice due to a dumb character supporting it and the smartest character in the show saying he trusts her, to make the most likely possibility more surprising. Maybe I just overthought it, which is very possible, but I thought that was an extremely well done drama. Some characters have potential, like, of course, Kei. I mean, she's popular, so there's gotta be some reason people like her. And Ryuen seems to be a good bad guy. Like a ruthless, just straight up, willing to trick anybody kind of bad guy, which is the kind of bad guy that I personally enjoy the most. Just some evil person. I also really want to know more about this Aryusu girl. She's mysterious and seems to hold a ton of power. It has nothing to do with the fact that she's a cute lolly. You can prove absolutely nothing. So the main cast is pretty complex and deep, but a lot of the side characters don't get the time to fully flesh out, so it's hard to care about them. The animation isn't standout or anything like that. It definitely isn't the most eccentric Lushe animation. It has its moments for sure, but it feels pretty average. And when you start comparing it to the light novel adaptations I mentioned earlier, it's not even a comparison. The art I like though. I think the character designs are vibrant and bright, especially the eyes are exceptionally detailed. The uniform is instantly recognizable and honestly kinda cool looking. It looks like a high class school uniform, and the islands looked beautiful. The crystal clear water, the trees, all of it was just elegant, and it perfectly contrasted the absolute chaos the story was during the island arc. I kind of already talked about my main issue with the art earlier, which is the fact Ayanokouji wears the same face no matter what scene he's in. As I said before, the production isn't exactly standout, but to be honest, for a show like this that's very dialogue heavy and character built, it doesn't need ultra amazing animation or anything. It just needs to be consistent, and that's what it is. I'm going to have significantly less to say about the production in this show. It's fine, but it's not the main aspect of the show that encouraged me to make a video on it, alright? Leave me alone. The tracks in this show are pretty solid. The OP in particular I'm a fan of. It has a nice little beat to it. And this section of the OP where the beat perfectly matches this effect was neat. The ending was also good. It has a nice slower pace to it and some solid singing. I have no issue with the music, but again, it's not exactly standout or anything. Nothing memorable about the background tracks that are really worth talking about. The voice acting is probably the best part about the production in this show. Shoya Shiba is voicing the dead-eyed character known as Ayanokouji. He seems pretty good at this type of character, as he also voiced Undertaker from the much better light novel adaptation 86. Now why do I need to be toxic? I could have just not said that, but I did anyway. HoriKITA did a good job as HoriKITA as well. She plays a variety of best girls for many different shows. Of course, she also plays the bestiest girl of all the best girls, Alma, and Koenji's voice actor was pretty funny. He did a fantastic job of such an out there character. The cast all did solid. I really enjoyed all their performances. I'm in a weird state with Classroom of the Elite, probably because I paid way too much attention to the reception from various people. I feel it's a little overrated. The show isn't terrible, but I can't give the credit to the actual adaptation. Everything I found good about it is probably done a lot better in the light novel. That's the main problem. We're entering an era where there are truly some groundbreaking light novel adaptations. Hell, honestly, I'd say we're already in that era. Some of the very best that are deserving of these adaptations are getting them, save for Detective is Already Dead. So to have an adaptation that is just solid for a light novel that's considered one of the best in the market right now is kind of sad. But on the flip side, this anime isn't nearly as bad as The Detective is Already Dead, and I think it's a little overhated by a completely different set of people. Some people want a perfect adaptation, and that just isn't possible. The anime wasn't that hard to follow, the pacing isn't terrible, maybe a little fast, but it isn't egregious. The only real issue is that it could have been better. Much better. I cannot stress enough that I liked this anime as a psychological drama with twists that actually surprised me, an interesting but also entertaining main protagonist, and an extremely intriguing premise. But again, a lot of that stuff is probably handled better in the light novel. It's a tough position. I'll say this anime is worth the watch with reasonable expectations, but if you prefer reading light novels, then it's probably best to just read it. Thank you everybody for watching this entire review. I hope you guys enjoyed, and you know Kikaya and I will be back once again with another anime review.
You know you